Today we're over here at Grossmont High School and I'm going to show you how to use the tire change machine that we have here. Actually, we have a couple of them. The first one I want to show you guys is made by Coates. And whenever you're going to change a tire, the first thing you got to do is let all the air out. This is the tool that we use to take the core out of the valve. First thing we got to do is take the cap off. The core inside is only hand tight, but being that there's air inside the tire, it's going to want to fly out. So I need to trap it with my fingers as it comes out, because I'm going to need to put this back in. I always set all the parts up here on this tray, and that way I don't lose them. Once you get all the air out, now what we have to do is called busting the bead. This area of the tire is called the bead of the tire, and where it matches against the rim is called the bead of the rim. That's where the tire actually seals against the metal rim, and it's stretched over there. So to get it off, we have to use a press or something to push it off with. So if you guys come around to this side, on the side of the machine right here is a blade that we use. And we use this blade to push the bead off the tire. You can see I'm going to put the tire against these pads. And this blade goes as close to the rim as you can get it, but it has to be on the rubber. If you put it against someone's rim, it could potentially bend it. Once you have it set properly, it's just a matter of pushing this button up here and holding it. And if you watch, it pushes the bead right off. Now there's a bead on the back side also, so we're going to flip this around. And we're going to do the inside bead too. That's okay. Sometimes it doesn't come off all the way. We just got to reposition it and push it in a different section, and it should come right off. There we go. The other thing is, you never want to let your hands get caught in there. This machine will chop your fingers off and it won't even slow down. Once you have the beads busted, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the wheel up on this turntable and lock it in place. So there's a pedal down here called the clamps pedal. And if I step and release that pedal, if you look up here, these will expand inside the rim and lock it on the table. So let me throw this up here and we'll lock it up on the table. And now I can work on this without it moving. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this tool head over and adjust it up against the edge of the rim. There's a locking lever right here. I want to lift this up and I'm going to push it down as hard and as tight as I can against the rim and then lock it in place. If you notice, you want to zoom in right here? If you notice, when I lock this in place, it lifts this tool head about 1/8 of an inch off the rim. And then there's an adjustment right here also. And this is going to adjust the tool head back off the rim about 1/16 of an inch once I get this thing adjusted. There we go. See it move off just a little bit? Now this tool head is not touching the rim and it shouldn't scratch it. So we're all set to go. The next thing I have to do is use this pry bar called a tire iron. This tire iron always fits right into the groove on the tool head, and I'm going to push down on the rubber and I'm going to catch the bead of the rim and stretch it over the top. Now the center of the rim is a little narrower, and that makes it easier to stretch this over. If you push this side down inside the rim, then the pry bar comes over the top really easily. And now we're going to have to rotate it. So this is another place that you want to be careful that you don't get your hands caught. We're going to hold down this rotation pedal. And if you watch up here, this tool head is going to peel the rubber right off the rim. That one's off. We still have to grab the bottom bead. So I'm going to lift up a little bit and make room over here, and it makes it much easier for me to see and to get my pry bar down in there. And then I'm going to lift and pry at the same time. And again, you see it's over the tool head, and so now I'm going to rotate, and the tool head will peel the rubber the rest of the way off. I'm done with this tire iron. I can put it back in the holster, and now we're done with this tire. You can go get a new one. Here in the auto shop, we don't always replace them with new ones. Sometimes we'll just take the same tire and put it back on for practice. Before you put it back on the rim, you want to make sure you lubricate the bead with this soapy stuff right here. Because if you tear the bead of the tire, it won't hold air anymore. And if it won't hold air, you need a new tire. So if you just went out and spent 150 bucks on a tire and you tear the bead, you may as well throw it away and spend another 150 bucks because it won't seal. A little bit of that wax fell inside there. Okay, so we always mount it from the same place where it came off from, which is this side of the machine. I'm going to put it up against the rim, and if you notice, I haven't touched the tool head adjustments at all because I'm going to swing this right in against the rim, and this is how I'm going to put the tire back on. I have to position the lower bead over the back and under the front, just like this. Once you have a position like this, you see where my hands are? I'm just going to guide the tire around while it's rotating. Rotation pedal, guide it around, the machine puts it on for you. The top bead, a little bit more effort involved, still goes over and under, but here I have to push the tire down into the center of the rim as it goes around. So I'm pushing with my hand, fist closed. You never put your hand like this, the machine will chop your fingers right off. I don't even want to keep my thumbs in there. So I ball up my fists and I push down and I rotate. And as it goes around, you'll see the tool head put the tire on over the rest of the bead here. Once I have the tire on the rim, I can take the tool head out of the way, and the last thing we need to do is we're going to use air pressure to stretch the bead over the rim. It's called seating the bead. Take your air hose over here, locks on. There's a pedal down here for air pressure. Step down to the first detent on there, and if you watch and listen, you'll probably hear this thing seat the bead. Yeah, that's one bead, that's the other bead. Seated both beads. Now I have to put the valve core back in. Remember, there's a little bit of air inside there, air pressure. So I want to set this up in the tool and hold it with my fingers. And then I just have to stick it in there and snug it down. It doesn't have to be very tight. Just with your wrist is good enough. And now a passenger car tire typically has 32 pounds of air, so I'm going to put this back on here. I'm going to air the tire up to 32 pounds. We have a gauge right here. I have about 5 pounds in there right now. This cycles back and forth. So to actually see the pressure in there, you have to take your foot off the pedal. So right now we have about almost 20. We're shooting for 32. You notice it says over here, never exceed 40 PSI, because the tire can burst. Okay, we're about 35, that's a little too much. There's a bleed valve right here. So I can bleed off the air pressure until I get it exactly where I want it. And I want this one at 32 PSI. That's pretty close. Perfect, right there. So I can take my hose off, hang it back up here. And all you have to do now is step and release the clamp pedal. And we can take our wheel over to be balanced. Okay, here we are over at our wheel balancer. You always have to balance a wheel after you put a new tire or change the position of the tire on here. Tires are made out of molten rubber, and when they pour it into a mold and it solidifies, sometimes you have a slightly thicker spot, and that makes for a little heavy spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where those heavy spots are, and we're actually going to counterbalance it with a weight on the opposite side. So before I mount this on the machine, the first thing I want to do is take off all the old weights. And there's a tool right here to take those off. You just pry on them. And we reuse these weights. So throw it up on the table over here. We'll use it on another tire maybe. When you go to mount this onto the machine, you have to center it up on this shaft. And there are several different cones that you can use. So you want a cone that fits in the center, but it doesn't fall through. That one's too small. That one's too big. Hopefully there's one in the middle. That's the one I want. The cone goes about halfway in, and that's about the position I want. So this cone is going to go on first. Then the wheel is going to go on facing outward. And then we're going to use this plastic cone, which protects the rim from getting damaged, and this large wing nut. You always tighten this by hand. You never hit it with a hammer or use any kind of a tool on here, because this is a computer. And if you hit it with a hammer, you might break it. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this by hand, as tight as you can make it. And then being that this is a computer, we have to enter a few pieces of information in here. The first piece of information it's asking you is how far is the rim from the machine. And so there's an arm with a measuring tape on it. We're going to bring this out and put the tip of this arm right in the bead of the rim. And then if you just look at the largest number on here, that's about 149. That's the number we're going to enter in here. 149. The next number is asking you how wide is the rim. There's a tool right here called a set of calipers. We're going to put these tips in the beads of the rim on both sides. And then we're just going to read the tool, which says 7 inches. So the next number we put in here is 7. The last number has to do with the size of the tire. It's actually the diameter of the rim. And so that's printed in the size of the tire on the side right here in the rubber. So if you spin this around and we find the tire size, it's a series of 3 numbers right here. Sorry, it took me a minute to see it. So I can try and clean that off a little bit. The first number, the P215, is how wide the tread is. The 60 means that this sidewall is 60% of the width of the tread. And the last number after the R16, that's the diameter of the rim, and that's what we want to enter in here. 16. Now we're all set to go. So there are safety features built into every piece of equipment that we use here in the auto shop. When you close the lid on this, called the hood, when you close the hood, this is going to spin at about 60 miles an hour, and the machine is going to tell me where to put the counterbalance, counterweights. If this ever came off here at 60 miles an hour and you were standing anywhere near it, it'd run you right over and probably kill you. So there's a little safety feature built into this. If you close this down, see what it says here? Loose. That means the wing nut is loose on there. So just lift the hood back up and tighten it real snug by hand and try it again. And if it's tight, it won't read loose. What it's going to do is it's going to give us some numbers, the amount of weight that we should add in ounces. So on the inner side, inner edge, we need to add 2 ounces, and on the outer edge, 1 ounce. So how do you know where to put the weight? Well, if you see this bar, if the tire is rotated 180 out, that bar has like a ghost flash to it. Bring it around till it's solid, and then line it up with this arrow right here. When that arrow turns green, you're going to look right here at this molded line in the machine's housing and eyeball straight up. That's where the weight's going to go. So let me grab a 2 ounce weight and I'll be right back. I have my 2 ounce weight. I have the tire set up in the exact location. All I need to do is eyeball straight up. This same tool that we use to remove the weights also has a hammer head on it to hammer them on. The only thing you got to be careful is that you don't nail your own fingers. Hammer that one on all the way. We're going to put the outer weight on next. So I'm going to rotate the tire until I get that solid line with the green arrow. And then if you come over here, there's a little dot right in the center of this shaft, and if you just go straight up from there, that's where the weight goes. So right here, straight up. Keep my thumb out of the way. Make sure that's hammered on all the way so it doesn't fly off. And then the last thing we want to do is make sure we put the weights in the correct place. So I'm going to spin it again, and if these come up all 0, that means it's perfectly balanced and ready to go back on the car. Oh, I love it when I'm successful at my job at school. Awesome. So with a 0 balance on both sides, it's ready to go back on the car. You can break the wing nut loose with one hand while you hold the tire. If something in the shop is too heavy for you, because we do work on some really large tires in here, there's a lot of people around. You can ask them for help. Lower this thing down and we're ready to go put it on the car. Okay, this is a brand new, well, I shouldn't say brand new, it's about a 4-year-old tire change machine. The design on this one allows you to, this machine will lift the wheel for you. A lot of mechanics get injured, they get back injuries from lifting really heavy stuff. So machine manufacturers have come out with tools now that will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So you want to make sure the outside of the tire is always pointed to the outside. And there's a pedal here that lifts it up for you. You can roll it along this little track And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it down on this table with this pin in one of the lug nut holes. And it, you know, you can move it around so it fits all different size rims. So I'm just going to slide this over, lower it down, shoot for that pin in the hole. I got it. Next thing I want to do is I want to try and center the center of the rim with the hole in the center of the table, because we're going to use this locking mechanism to hold the wheel on the table for us. So you have to push down and rotate it 90 degrees and then pull on it to make sure it's locked in. This has a little slip connection on it, so you don't have to screw it all the way down. You can slide it down to the rim, it grabs again, and you just snug it. Now, this is what we consider a low profile tire. This tire size right here is a 245/40/17. And like I told you on the other tire we looked at, the first number, 245, is how wide the tread is. The second number is called the aspect ratio, which is how tall the sidewall is. And this tire is only 40% of the entire tread tall, which is pretty narrow edge of the tire. And then the rim, the last number on here is a 17. The rim is 17 inches. So just like any tire machine, when you want to change a tire, you have to take the air out first. So I'm going to use my little tool to remove the core. Be right back. Same tool we used before. Just unscrew the core out of there. And if there's some air pressure, which I think this tire has some air in it, I'm gonna have to grab that so it doesn't fly out of there. And then I set all this stuff over on the tray right here. That way I don't lose it. A little different, the controls for this are up above. We still have to bust the beads though before we take the rubber off the rim. And so these wheels right here are what's gonna remove the rubber off the rim for us or break the beads. All the controls are right here. So what I want to do is I want to bring the upper roller close to where the tire is located. And then I need to adjust it. It just happened that it landed in the right spot. But I want to make sure that this wheel is on the rubber, not on the rim, and this little tail should be on the rim. So if I need to adjust it, there's a lever right here. You push this button to unlock it, and I can move the tool head or the wheel in or out and fine tune it to exactly where I need it, which is right there. What we're going to do next is we're going to bring that upper roller just down a little bit so it starts to push the bead off, and we're going to get it to it's under the rim, and then right here is a button called indent the roller. And I'm going to press this indent upper roller, and I want you guys to see what happens. When I press that button, once you have the upper roller against the tire on here, we're actually going to bring it down a little bit below the edge of the rim. And there's a button over here that says indent upper roller. And so if you watch what happens, it's going to push the roller forward so that it's under the rim. Now that the roller is under the rim, I can start to rotate. There's a pedal down here to rotate. And as I rotate, I'm going to slowly bring the upper roller down, down, down until the entire bead is broken. You guys will see what I mean here. So start rotating. I'm going to slowly bring that wheel down. You can see it's pushing the bead off the rim, and it's completely pushed the bead off the rim. Now I'm done. I can get that tool head out of the way. And now I have to do the same thing with the lower bead. And so we're going to bring this lower roller up into the same position, and you really have to kneel down to make sure that you're doing this properly. I want to bring it up here, in this case above the rim slightly, and then indent the lower roller up at the control panel. If you guys watch, you'll see. And now I can start to rotate again, and this time I'm going to bring that roller up a little bit at a time. And it's going to slowly remove the bead off the edge of the rim there, and it looks like I got it all the way off. I can get that out of the way now. We're going to switch tools now. We're going to use this tool. It's called tool head. We're going to bring this down into the rim, and it's going to hook the rubber back here, and it's going to pull the rubber off for us. When you use the tool head, you want to make sure that you lube up the bead real nice over here. And I always put a little bit of this soapy wax onto the tool head. Control panel over here will bring the tool head down for us. And I'm going to push it all the way inside. Whoops. This has to go on the outside. Then I have to start again. I have to move this back a tiny bit, I think. And I need to rotate this thing so it falls in there. It'll probably work a lot better, right? The next step is to bring the tool head down, and if you watch, you'll see I'm going to bring it all the way down inside the tire. It's going to hook the bead. There it goes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring the bead over the top of the rim with the tool head. Just like that. And we want the rim to sit right in this groove on the tool head. You can see the tires up above. And now if we start to rotate, it should start to remove the rubber from the rim. There we go. Got that outer bead off. Now we're going to use the tool head to help us lift the tire up. I want to bring the tire up against the, I want to bring the lower bead up against the top bead. Just like that. And now I'm going to bring my lower roller up and peek it through here. You'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, you see it peeking through? And then I want to indent it so that it's actually underneath there. Like that, and now I'm going to rotate. It's going to take it right off. And that's it. Get the tool head out of the way. We can pretend to go get our new tire. And we can put our practice tire back on. So you always want to lube it up with some of this waxy soap. This has a ton of soap on here already. And then on this machine, the tire always goes on from the back because we're going to use this tool head to reinstall the tire. So I'm going to bring the tool head down till the top edge of the rim is right in that groove where it's supposed to be. Right there. And like the other machine, you have to get the rubber bead over the back and under the front. And you might have to come over here to see it. Just like that right there. And then I'm just going to guide the tire slightly with my hands while I rotate. Remember to keep your fingers out of here. Sometimes with all the soap on there, it tends to slip, and that's why you have to use your hands a little bit to help it. Upper bead, the same thing. Have to get it over and then under. But this time I'm not going to use my hands. I'm going to use this little pole right here. It's called a ram. And I'm going to push the rubber down with the ram. And now when I rotate, I'm going to keep my hand up here, and I'm just going to guide this around. And it's going to put the tire right on. Sometimes you have to relocate this over here and push down again. And it goes on the rest of the way. Back on, I can get all my tools out of the way. Push them back in, out of the way. The last thing we need to do is use air pressure to seat the bead. There's an air hose right here, and there's a foot pedal down below. Make sure this is locked on. Give it a little air down below here. And if you watch or listen, you'll hear the beads pop on. There we go. Top bead. I didn't hear the bottom one, but it slid right on. There's so much soapy wax on here, it slid right on. Once we have the bead seated, we're going to put our valve core back in. I like to set that up in my fingers because there's going to be some air pressure in here. And go ahead and snug that in there so we don't have any air leaking. And then again, this particular tire being a low profile, it gets 35 pounds of air pressure in it. And there's also a gauge here. Just hold the pedal down. Okay, we're about a pound too high on here. This hose is leaking a little bit. So there's a little bleed off valve over here too if you need to adjust the pressure. There we go. We can bleed this down to 35 if we need to. And that's it. Once we have it filled with proper air pressure, you can disconnect your air hose. Please hang it back up right here. When you go to take this off, you could unscrew the whole thing, but it's simpler if you just pull the handle like that, slide it up, push down in the center, counterclockwise, 90 degrees, lift it out. Please put it back in its holster. And then we're not going to lift the tire off of here, you guys. We're going to use the machine to lift it off. And so if you notice, there's very little physical effort to get this done. The machine does all the work for me. And now it's ready to be balanced.
So 2 things that we're going to do right away is we're going to remove the wheel weights with the wheel weight pliers. So you just grab it and it pries off. They could be very strong as far as the way they mount on here. So be very careful not to pinch your hand. So what I've done a ton is when these things snap, you pinch your hand. It's kind of a bad part about these pliers. Always keep your fingers on the outside and remove the wheel weights on both sides of this tire. Now this one has sticky weights, so we also have to remove that. But let's get the wheel weight off first. There we go. Put these up here. There's a special tool for the wheel weight, so let me go get that as well. This is a special sticky weight removal chisel. It's made out of a hardened plastic, and that's so you don't damage rims. So this is a very common tool you'll see in a tire shop, and it's just to remove the sticky weights from the car. So we will go over sticky weights. Here's another one right here. I'll remove that. And look at this. I got another wheel weight. This tire was way out of balance. And I would argue there was so much weight on this tire. That's what led to this separation of the tread. So way too much weight. Oh, there we go. That would have pinched my finger if I had it in the middle. There we go. Okay. So now let's go ahead and remove our Schrader valve right here. This is called a Schrader valve. And Mr. Lear called it a tire core. So I call it a Schrader valve. And you'll see it listed as a Schrader valve in a lot of vehicles. Let's see, it's almost out. These things do shoot out. And this will allow the tire to deflate. Okay, so I'm wearing a mask now because we actually have an audience and we're in COVID. Now what we need to do is what we call break the bead. So we put this lever right here, and then we're going to step on this this first pedal to the right, and you'll see it contract. Put it over on this side, and you'll see it contract onto the tire, and it breaks the tire off of the rim. And you want to do that 2 places that are 180 out on both sides of the rim. So there's the back side. And then we're going to go to the back side. It might take 2 tries. There we go. On the rim there. Perfect. Now we're ready to mount this. Okay. So we're going to use the second lever here, and that expands the jaws to clamp onto the rim. And if you lift it, it brings them in. Here's why I don't want to see, and I have a picture of this. I don't want to see people holding this down, because what it will actually do is separate the screw from the arm. So never just keep your foot on this, especially with no tire on it. Once you have a tire on it, you hold it down until it locks on. So this one also, you have to push down all the way. It looks like it's not going down all the way. There we go. So I contracted those arms. Now I'm going to expand them so the tire spins. Perfect. And then I'm just going to push this tire back off the rim because it does seat itself. and we're ready to take the tire off. Okay, so we're going to take this tire spoon and we're going to lift the bead up and over this bump right here. Okay, you lift it up and over the bead, the bead over the bump right here, and you just spin it using the right pedal. And that takes that tire right off. Then you got to kind of lift the tire a little bit, and you got to go underneath the tire. So you got to go underneath that bottom bead there and lift that over the bump and then spin it. And that takes that tire off. This tire was really challenging for two reasons. It's lost its pliability. It's very old. It's stiff, but also the rim construction, you could see right here where it's taller and then it sinks down here. So that first bead was a challenge because the bottom bead was catching on this part of the rim. All right, I'm gonna get our new tire. You always use some kind of soap, or Hunter makes this great tire insulation lube. It's kind of a waxy, soapy substance. Put that on the bead on both sides. And this prevents the tire from tearing. And always keep your lid on it afterward. We're going to put this tire on an angle. Drop our arm down. Always be aware you don't want your face here, because this can pop up and you don't want it to smack you in the face. Okay? And we're going to go over this side and under this side. So the tire diagonally over this bump and under this bump. So we're going to put this down. Needs to go down. Put the tire over the left side and under the right side, and you want to tuck it in there and then spin it, and it will pop right on. Then you again over, under, get that tucked. Sometimes you got to reposition your body right here. There we go. And this is where you don't want your face in front of this arm. And you spin that on. And then we can go ahead and remove this. I noticed I had open palms putting this tire on. I don't ever curl my fingers underneath the rim, whether the top or the bottom. I keep my palms, my fingers open as I'm pushing on that, because it will really damage your fingers if your fingers get caught in there. Okay. Now we're ready to inflate the tire. So there's another lever on this side that we're going to use. And it has two positions. It has the slow, and then it has the fast. Okay? So we want to inflate it with the fast because you need to rush a lot of air in to seat the bead on the tire. That's why we have no Schrader valve in here, because we want to maximize the tire, and we want to kind of lift up on it with our fingers extended, not curled. And you'll see right here why you don't want to put your fingers in there. And you're going to inflate it until I always say inflate it till 35. So now I don't have to do the fast, I just go slow until I get to 35 on my gauge. And I always do 35 because that guarantees that the beads are going to be seated properly. There we go. Grab my Schrader valve, but then now I have air pressure that's going to want to shoot this valve out. Okay? So this is where I definitely need safety glasses. And then I'm going to be real fast, but hold on to that valve. And put that valve back in there. Hook up my air hose so it doesn't fall. And you just spin that in. And there's our Schrader valve. All right, so to remove this tire, on the left pedal, you lift up. And then it will pop up at you, and then you got it off, okay? All right, we're ready to go balance it. So let's go balance. So we have the Road Force wheel balancer here by Hunter. Really cool machine. We got to find a hub that's going to fit into this rim properly. And it looks like it's going to be, we use this gauge, a yellow, might be a white. So I'm going to grab the yellow first. And we're going to stick that in there and see how it fits. And it needs to protrude a little bit. There we go. So it's fitting around this inner rim. So now we'll put this on and put this under my, now the Road Force has a nice feature where it will lift the tire for you. So you don't have to use your back as much. We want to slide that on here. Then we're going to use a wing nut to tighten it down. And we want to make sure that this is centered. Put that on, lower this down. And then I want to give my tire a little spin. I want to make sure it's mounted properly and not wobbling. And it is. So I'm okay. We're ready to start with the balancing process. So I want to hit balance right here. So this is equal to K1, K2, K3, K4. So balance is K4. First thing it's going to ask me to do is going to ask me to check my tire pressure. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to hook it up to my tire. And you can set the pressure with this dial. And I'm going to set it to 35, right on 35. And it will self-inflate it to the proper amount. The older machines, you have to set it yourself. And you got to know that you can't balance a tire without setting the pressure properly. So never balance a flat tire or overinflated tire. And the pressure has to be correct for you to balance it. Okay? So once when you have that done, we need to measure the tire. And it's telling you that you take this arm right here and you need to use this, but there's two arms on the Road Force. So I'm gonna grab this arm. I'm going to grab this arm, and we're going to go to the same place on both sides, just inside the rim on both sides. So you got to walk around, and you'll see I have it in the same place. And then you step on the pedal down underneath here, and it'll make a beep. And then if you look at the screen, it gives you all three rim dimensions. So that's how we take the tire, and we tell the machine what tire we have on the machine. So now we're ready to balance. Let's just go lower the hood. And it's going to tell us where we need to put the weight. Now it's going to check for balance. Okay, so here's what we need. We need two weights. We need on the inside of the rim, we need to put a 25-ounce weight. We're going to use a sticky weight. On the outside of the rim, it's telling us we need a half weight, and it kind of shows you where you need to put it. This does two measurements. This is called a static imbalance, and this is a dynamic imbalance. The reason why you use two weights, one on each side, it takes care of both type of wheel imbalances, static, and it takes care of dynamic by using two weights. It also gives you a measurement on how out around the rim and the tire is. So the tire we took off this rim would have failed this miserably. So it would have been out, it would have probably just not even gotten to the screen. So we're perfectly round, we're good. So we're ready to go ahead and put these weights on. So we have a aluminum rim, also called a mag rim, and we want to figure out what kind of wheel weight to use. And then we use this gauge here. And you find the one that matches the rim the best. And so far I like yellow. Yellow seems to be working the best right there. And it's an MC. So now I'm going to walk around the machine and I'm going to get a 1/2 ounce yellow weight. And it will be the right weight to fit the rim. I like to reach over the rim. It gives me a better leverage. But before I put this on, I'm going to do the outside. The set up right now for the inside. So I'm just going to give this tire a little push, and it'll automatically center the rim where it should be. You install the weights at 12 o'clock, always straight up from the spindle. 12 o'clock, get it on there, and then just hammer it on. Now I want to do the inside. Oh. We want to spin it. There we go. But on the inside, we're going to use sticky weights. So these are sticky weights. We're going to use a sticky weight on the inside. Some rims, you can't use a regular wheel weight, or you would not want your wheel weight, if it's a nice expensive car, you wouldn't want your wheel weight showing. So you would put a sticky weight on the inside where you can't see it, okay? So this is just a shop car, so we use a regular weight. They're 1/2 ounce or 1/4 ounce increments. So we could use a 1/2 ounce or 1/4 ounce. We need 1/4, so I'm just gonna rip off one of these. But you have to clean the rim. So I'm gonna take a little brake clean and a little rag, spray the brake clean in the rag, and then you're gonna wipe it right where it's gonna go. Okay, and we're ready. So I gotta put my arrow on green. So I'm gonna rotate the tire until I get the green. Oh, I go the other way. There we go. And that's telling me I'm ready to put this at 12 o'clock. There's a line right here on the machine that refers to 12 o'clock. And I'm gonna go straight up from that line and attach it to the rim. Right on the inside there. Press that on. And then we're gonna lower the hood and see if we got the weights right. And look at that, perfect. So when we first did the old tire on this, it had probably 2 ounces of weight on both sides. Now we only have a 1/4 ounce here and a 1/2 ounce here. We're perfect. What I don't like seeing is when you have 2 weights side by side like this. That would be really unprofessional. If you had like a weight like this and you need another 1/4 ounce, you would be better off to either rebalance it or stick a sticky weight next to this right behind it on the rim. But I never want to see 2 weights side by side. That is very unprofessional. We have a bad tire here. It has a separation of the tread and the ply inside. So this car, when it went down the road or just in the drive right here, it would hop because there's actually a high spot. The tire is no longer round. It's a high spot right where it starts to split here, and the car would actually lift off the ground like an inch when this came in contact with it. So we're gonna replace that with a new tire that we bought. Okay, so this is the tire size. It's a 215/60 R16, and I want to go over what these mean and also what these index ratings are here. So 215 is in millimeters. So we're going to use a ruler, and we're not going to use the inch side. We're going to use the millimeter side. But if you look at this ruler offhand, it shows millimeters, but it's actually, the numbers represent centimeters. So it's 10 millimeters to 1 centimeter. So let's say that this tire is 215 millimeters wide. So this is the width in millimeters, okay? So what it means on the ruler is 215. This would be 20 centimeters, which would be equal to 200 millimeters. So we want to go to 215. So this tire should be 21 centimeters and an additional 5 millimeters. So 210 millimeters or 21 centimeters is what we have to understand. 21 is centimeters, but we times that by 10 to get millimeters, and then we add another 5. And then we're going to put this right here, and you'll notice the width of the tire is actually 215 millimeters. That is the first measurement. The second measurement is called the aspect ratio, and it's really a percentage. It's 60% of 215. So I did the math, and the math actually ended up being 60% of 215. So I times 215 on my phone calculator by 0.6. So I changed 60% to a decimal. So 215 times 0.6 was 129 millimeters. Okay, so if we look at the ruler, here is the centimeters. We want to go to 12 centimeters, which is 120 millimeters, and we want to go to 29. And then that ends up being, so 120 millimeters and 9 millimeters, 129. And that is the aspect ratio of this tire. It is actually 129 millimeters tall. So the smaller the aspect ratio, so the smaller the number, so let's say it's 30%, well, then that would make this tire skinnier or less tall. So this is the aspect ratio, and it refers to the 60 or the 30 or the 45, whatever it is. R stands for radial, and radial tires are easy to identify because they are very round, where bias ply are very straight up and down. Let me get a bias ply so you can see that. So I have a radial tire, which we're going to put on, and then I have a bias ply tire. You could see there's a major construction difference between the two tires. The steel belts inside are laid diagonally on this one, and vertically and horizontally. Much stronger tire than the bias ply. Bias ply really is just two, because bi means two plies. And okay, so a bias ply tire tends to be a lot stiffer on the sidewall, and it tends to bounce on the road. So this tire will bounce on the road, and you'll see trailers bouncing a lot behind whatever vehicle is towing it. Where a radial tire will absorb that shock, because we have this natural curve that is actually part of your suspension. I would argue it's the first part of your suspension, where the tire picks up all that inconsistencies of the road, and it softens it. Where a bias ply tire is going to be a really rough road. So R stands for radial. So bias ply would be the opposite of that. And then 16 stands for the rim size in inches. So the rim size in inches, in this case, my rim is it's a 16-inch rim, okay? So it's based on the bead. So it's a 16-inch rim. So that's why we have a 16-inch tire. Okay, so 215 is the width of the tire, 60 is the aspect ratio, the height of the tire, R stands for radial, 16 is in inches, it stands for the diameter of the rim. Now these are our load index and our speed index. So you actually have to refer to a chart for the load index and look up what 95 translates into the actual weight of the tire that the tire could hold. V is the speed index, and you refer to an index chart and see what speed this tire is rated at based on the letter V.